Welcome to another edition of In the Know. I am your host, Tony Reeves. And today we're going to talk about something that you should know about running a business. And what I want you to know is this: I want you to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, let me tell you, when I went out on my own, one of the things that I was focusing on was creating a work environment that was comfortable. Now, comfortable can mean a lot of different things, but from my standpoint, comfort meant having my bills taken care of. And from my mindset, it meant taking care of paying for income and coming into the home and finally giving me the lifestyle I was used to living. Now, part of that also meant creating an infrastructure for my firm that would give me the ability to be able to do the things that I needed to do in order to be able to conduct the kind of business I wanted to conduct. Now, the business part of it was fairly straightforward. I knew the law. I knew what I needed to do in terms of researching. I knew all those things. But what I did not appreciate was how important it was for me to have a change element in my life. Now, I was lucky because I had quite a few people who I would call change agents. And you were like, what are change agents? These are people who are, as I would define, who are aggressively about not only encouraging you to make changes, but letting you know how making changes can be beneficial to you. And probably the two biggest people that resonate with me is my boy Frank, who works in that arena, and my office manager, my wife, Carol. Well, why would you say that? Well, because early on, I was still moving under the old school attorney format. I was looking for a brick and mortar spot. I had papers, still using papers. I was looking for having file cabinets. All those things were from the world that I came from and that I thought was a great representation of success. Well, guess what? I had to make some changes. My wife encouraged me to move from paper to paperless, which wasn't hard because I came from an environment from working with another firm that made that transition. But I instantly went back to paper because I thought that's what attorneys did. But it was silly because I had already been used to doing things paperless. So she's like, why are you going back when you're used to paperless already? So that was a big change. Going from brick and mortar to virtual. People, I had 2 office spaces that I never met clients. Think about this. Almost all of my clients, I either met them at the court, at their homes, in libraries, or places like that. I never met them in any of my brick and mortar spots. But I could still remember my wife turning to me and saying, hey, do you meet any of your clients at any of these locations? Like in your offices? No. Then why do you have office space? So guess what? As soon as she said that, I shut down. So literally after a year of having 2 brick and mortar locations in 2 different cities, thinking that made me look a particular way, I went from that to having a virtual practice. And you know what happened? Nothing. Nobody lost any sleep because guess what? They still had access to me over the phone and they still knew I would come to see them. Then there was the transition from desktop to laptop to iPad. Whew. Yeah, that took about a minute to get used to. And it was funny because Frank was on me because, again, I was a mobile attorney. So not only was I mobile, I was virtual at the same time. And his whole fascination was, so you don't really need a desktop as much because you're out in the streets. And then he's like, you want to get smaller and smaller so you can move quicker. So guess what ended up happening? I had a desktop. That desktop transitioned to being one that my office manager, my wife, used. I got a laptop, but then after a while, I got an iPad and found that it was easier to operate from the iPad. So I literally went from over a 2-year period from a desktop to a laptop to an iPad. And then finally moving from a server to the clouds. Now, keep in mind, when I first started practicing law, I came out of the old school paper system where there was like files and files and files and miles of files. But then when we moved paperless, we had all of our documents stored electronically on servers at remote locations. So I thought that was the way to go. But then Frank started cluing me into cloud-based services. What in the hockey sticks is cloud-based services? Well, guess what? It was a new way of practicing law. And guess what it did for me? It revolutionized it because I no longer had to worry about carrying around big, bulky, hard files. I never had to worry about servers in remote locations crashing. I never had to worry about any of those things. And it gave me the ability to not only have a better infrastructure for myself, but it gave me the ability to provide a greater experience to my clients. And so why am I sharing this to you? Because the one thing I haven't told you about was how uncomfortable all these changes made me feel. And they made me feel very uncomfortable. Paper to paperless. I held on to paper files for about a good 2 years after we had moved paperless because I had convinced myself that I needed to have them just in case. When I moved from going from a physical location to a virtual location, I was very uncomfortable because I just knew I was going to lose some business because all attorneys had physical locations. People want to come see the nice lobbies and the nice reception areas. Nobody cared about that. All they cared was, could I get them their money? That's all they was thinking about. Same thing with regards to going from desktop to iPad, as well as server to clouds. I was so resistant to doing those things because those things were not a part of my normal DNA. But here was the crazy part. I was doing these things regardless, which is why it's kind of crazy that I would be so resistant to these things, because I was doing it already. So why is this important for me to let you know this? It's because guess what? If you're going to go out into the world and you're going to open your own business, you've got to plan for change. You got to know that you can't do the same thing all the time. And it's okay, because there are some people who take pride in the fact that, our system and process haven't changed in 20 years. Yeah, that's the lie you're saying. You've tweaked some things. You're going to have to tweak some things, because if not, the technology and the things that you used back in the day are not going to be as prominent as they are today. So you want to be able to do something. You want to be aware that you're going to have to make these adjustments accordingly. And the thing you also need to be aware of, change sucks. That's right. I said it. It sucks, because what happens is that we are creatures of habit. We don't like changing things. We do things a certain way all the time, and we don't want anybody who's going to cause us or ask us to make any adaptations to anything that we're used to do. But I want you to understand this, and this is the point that I want you to get. Change is coming. Change is necessary. Change is uncomfortable, but change is a vital part of your success. So as opposed to spending all of your energy fighting people because you just know the way you do it works best for you, be receptive to the possibility that what you need to do now going forward, the change you may have to make, may be beneficial to you in the short term and the long term for not only the infrastructure for your business, but the experience for your clients. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of In the Know. I am your host, Tony Reeves. As always, if you want to hire me for speaking, if you want to look out to find out any of the other things that I'm doing out in the community, whether it be other videos, podcasts, things of that nature, everything you need to know about me, you can find on anthonyreeves.com. And as always, I have to ask you, are you ready for the Anthony Reeves experience?